Welcome to Data Science Perspectives. This series focuses on analytics and data science professionals from across industry to learn about how their career unfolded, what skills they look for when hiring, and what trends they think are coming next. I'm your host, Bill Franks. Let's get to it. Welcome to this episode of Data Science Perspectives. I'm your host, Bill Franks. Today I'm going to be joined by Kira Barclay. I first met Kira about a decade ago when she was a member of an International Institute for Analytics executive program that at the time I was participating in and eventually led for a while. She's one of those people who brings high energy and enthusiasm to every situation she's placed in, and she's also very willing to challenge people's thinking. So I'm looking forward to this conversation today. Kira is currently the CEO and founder of Black Antler Advisory and Consulting. She also has a couple of side hustles in the e-commerce space. Before going out on her own a few years ago, she spent 20 years with John Deere in Iowa and Illinois. She started her path at John Deere in the credit risk and pricing groups. Then she moved into strategic planning and analytics. She capped her career there with a tenure as Deere's chief data and analytics executive, where she oversaw a global team. Kira's got a BS and master's in statistics from Iowa State and also an MBA from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. And with that, let's welcome Kira to the show. So thanks for joining me on the show today, Kira.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to get started with everybody. Maybe just give us an overview of how it is that you got into the world of analytics and data science.
Oh, that's a great question. So when I was in school, I really enjoyed math, loved studying math. Math was the class that was easiest for me. And I think trying to figure out what I wanted to do with that was challenging. So I probably knew I either needed to be a math teacher or a professor. Went to college, majored in math, and really actually kind of fell in love with the application of math in business. And so at the time, data science wasn't really a degree. So there wasn't an option to say, hey, I'm gonna go study data science. But there was some really interesting work going on kind of at the intersection of math and statistics. And that's where I kind of fell in love with that combination. I did an internship at John Deere during that time, and then I was sold. I was like, yep, this is the deal. I was really excited about the opportunity to use those skill sets in a business. And even just from an internship, I could totally see the possibilities that were there. So that was kind of how I got there. I always like to tell people I was in data science before data science was cool, before it even existed. But
well, what's funny to me in a way is, people don't realize, I know, for example, that there's a lot of analytics going on in companies like a John Deere and what people might think heavy equipment. I don't think that the average person necessarily would suspect that. So, you ended up spending close to 20 years at John Deere. And so what was it about that sector that kept you engaged, professionally, both from an analytical perspective and a business model perspective?
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm, and not every John Deere employee can say that, right? But a lot do have that type of background and history. And really, actually, I think what kept me at John Deere for so long was the customers and the problems that John Deere was working on solving. So I think in particular, being tied to a rural community, really deeply understanding the problems that our customers were trying to solve, and then how the company I was working for was engaging and helping them solve those problems. That was really motivating to me. So that's a big reason why I stayed for 20 years. I think the other thing is just the amount of opportunity in terms of the problems to be solved. So kind of when I came in, being very early, I was actually in the area I got hired into. I was the first person with a graduate quantitative degree that was hired in. And so it was kind of an opportunity to show what was possible. And it really grew from there. But I think just the amount of opportunity and the amount of runway to make a difference was really the other reason that I stayed for so long.
I don't think I ever knew about you that you grew up on a farm.
I did.
Wow. So that truly is then you understood what they did inherently from your life. It wasn't like, I'm going to go there and learn about the business. You had lived with it.
Yeah, I mean, my grandpa farmed, both of my grandpas farmed actually, and when I was a kid, most Saturday mornings I went to the John Deere dealership with my grandpa, and he had coffee there on Saturday mornings, and so it's part of who I was and kind of part of growing up. It was kind of funny when I graduated from college. My family was like, "Oh, she got hired by John Deere, she's fine, she made it, she's done, we got her." So yeah, it was runs pretty deep, but it is there's a cultural component to the organization that is really resonates, I think, with kind of rural communities, and so many folks at John Deere, I think that's a pretty common reason that people stay, is connections to family farms and things like that. But certainly the opportunity to do what I loved and make a difference was there at the same time. So it's kind of the combination of those two things.
Oh, that's cool. One
Yeah.
one thing I know in recent years that has really upped the ability of companies like Deere to do uh, great things with analytics is, Internet of Things and sensor data specifically. So you've got not only your manufacturing facilities where sensors and sensor data can play a big role, but then of course your equipment now contains sensors and you're doing analytics on the equipment, and the farmers have
Mhm.
apps and you all are doing stuff at corporate. So just in the general space, not necessarily specifically at John Deere, but
Yeah.
in that farm equipment space, what are some of the uses of sensors and sensor data that you found most compelling that might interest people listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about a machine passing over a field, right? I think the way that people at Deere, I think, used to think is in terms of the piece of iron, right? The machine, the equipment. However, when you take the machine and you add to it the data that's captured when you're actually traveling over the field, if you think about that as like a geolocation, all of a sudden now you've got information about the terrain, the soil. I mean, you've now created a whole nother opportunity to solve a completely different problem. At the end of the day, what a farmer really cares about is yield. They want to improve their yield, right? They want to reduce their input costs, and they want to get more out of the land. And they want to be able to do that in a way that preserves that land over a long period of time. So what I think is really exciting about a lot of the sensor data is just the ability to understand what's going on at that particular spot in the field, and then provide insights back to growers about things that they can do to improve their yield and therefore profitability. So it's a compelling problem, again, because improving yield doesn't only just improve a farmer's financials, right? It actually increases the amount that's being produced and the number of people that we're able to feed in the world, right? With the same amount of land, which we know we're not going to get more land, right? So it's a really compelling problem to solve. The sensor data is really critical to doing that. We talk about agronomic insights as how we think about kind of the soil and anything that can impact and influence yield. But there's also a lot of insights that come off of the machine, even machine performance. So how can we help them really proactively understand if they're going to have maybe a failure in the machine, or hey, you're going to need a service call here in a couple of days. Let's be proactive about that instead of letting the machine fail and then having downtime, right? At really critical points in the harvest or planting process, because there's just really small time windows to get those things done. So those are a couple of examples. And then of course, you mentioned factories, right? There's sensors in the factories. It's really caused a explosion in the amount of data and then the frequency of that data. And so when you think about that internally in any organization as well, it creates a whole new set of problems to solve in terms of how to capture it, how to maintain it, how long to keep it, all of these types of things. And so that's a really interesting internal problem that I think a lot of organizations are facing. And a lot of it goes back to more of that real time data capture on sensors.
One of my favorite examples I use when I talk about how fast things have evolved, I actually use an example from your industry, which was I remember it was not even 10 years ago that I was so impressed that there were satellite images being used or drone footage. And then there would be
Yeah.
like, at that time, it was like a 3 yard by 3 yard grid of the field that would say, where does it look drier and wetter? And where does it look
Mm-hmm.
like it needs more fertilizer? But then, in the last couple of years, they're down to like cameras looking at each plant individually as it goes through the
Yeah.
field and custom applying water and pesticide and such. So when you're talking
Yep.
about looking at the soil, this isn't just, hey, it looks like your farm needs a little more or less water because it's dry or wet. It's
Yeah.
literally now down to the point of these plants need this and these plants need that in real
Yep.
time. It's shocking how sophisticated it is to me for something that people still think about. You got a big machine going through a field.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazingly sophisticated. I mean, you talked about going from like a 3x3 grid. The objective now for a lot of equipment and agronomic companies is to get down to the seed level. So when you think about something as small as a seed, right, and that turns into the plant or plant by plant actions, right? But seed level is really, when you think about advancements in agriculture, seed level is really where we're going to go as an industry.
Wow. That's cool. That takes it up another
It
notch.
is
That's
cool.
like
Yeah,
down to a grain of rice.
that's
Okay.
right.
Um, as you worked through Deere over years, I know you
Hmm.
slowly, you mentioned you were one of the first people hired with a certain skill set you had. Over time. You grew your role and added a bunch of folks. So as your team grew larger and larger, how did you develop your leadership style, and how did that evolve over time as you matured and as the team matured?
Yeah, great question. I think so. So leadership is actually something that's really important to me, and I think it's important in kind of the tech world in general, because there is a belief, and I've seen this demonstrated as well, that sometimes your best folks technically are not necessarily your best folks at leading teams, and some of the best leaders that I've worked for have that technical background, but have put a lot of time and energy into being able to improve their leadership skills and grow teams and lead teams. So, for me personally, even from the very beginning, I started leading just one person. So when I was a couple years in at John Deere, I had one person that I was leading, and that individual, I remained very focused on that individual and how I could help make that individual successful. And as my teams grew, and I, gained responsibility for more people, more functions, more regions around the world, um, I kept that same mentality of, it's my job to help these people be successful. Like, they all have things that they need to accomplish, and their collective accomplishments are what's going to advance the cause, right? And so I really remained super focused on how to help those individuals be successful. And early on in my leadership, it might have meant getting my hands dirty and digging in on a problem with somebody, code pairing, like things as simple as that. Um, as I progressed down the road and got to the point where I had hundreds of individuals that I was responsible for, a lot of it became more about trying to remove organizational barriers, right? Organizational roadblocks. And anytime you're in a big company, there's lots of just big company stuff. The thing of the Dilbert cartoons, right? If anybody ever reads Dilbert cartoons, like, it's real. That's why it's funny, is
It
that it's
is
so
real.
real.
Yes, it is.
And so I would always joke that, like, oh my gosh, this feels like a Dilbert cartoon, which was like most every day, right? But those create, like, actually those situations create real barriers for people to get things done. And so my leadership philosophy consistently is to take care of the people that I'm responsible for. It manifests itself in different ways, I think, depending on how large your team is, and you can do that in different ways. But that's really how I've always approached leading teams.
Yeah, the Dilbert. It's all too real and past lives, and sometimes I'm at a large organization now too, you're exactly right. It's always,
Yep.
I feel like we're in a Dilbert cartoon right now. I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's
Yeah.
the,
I
and it's never
actually,
good to
funny
be in a
story.
Dilbert cartoon.
No, no, I sat next to Scott Adams on a plane once, the author of the Dilbert cartoon, and it was actually the most interesting plane ride. I asked him if he really knew when he was like making these comics. I'm like,
Yeah.
did you really knew how it was? Did you know that this was actually true?
And did he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm good to know. That's good to know. I would have been disappointed if he didn't.
I know,
Um,
I know.
So, more recently you took the leap and just started your own research and advisory firm. So
I did.
what led you to do that? And then, how is that changed how you're approaching the whole business world?
Yeah, it has been one of the best changes. I have really, really enjoyed what I've been able to do in the last year or so. And, I'm very blessed to have had 20 years with one company, and I've learned so much over that time, built great relationships. I've had great mentors. And I just kind of got to the point where I felt like I could have a greater impact just where the business was going and the industry was going, that I could probably have a greater impact stepping out and starting to work with some individuals and do things a little differently. So I took that leap. It's tough, right? It's tough to leave when you've been somewhere for so long.
Yeah.
But the great thing is the thing that truly matters is the people, and the people that you've invested in, and the people that have invested in you. And that's one, I think, really important lesson, whether you stay at a company for 20 years or you stay at a company for 2 years, right? Is that the people never go away, right? Like, the people are always there. They're going to come back and find you. There's no, you never want to burn a bridge. You just keep taking care of people. I mean, I think that's kind of the consistent lesson that I would pass on, is just keep taking care of people, and particularly the people that matter most to you. You only have so much time to invest. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of kind of more independent thought leadership work, advisory work, trying to help other leaders with some of the things that I've learned, and help kind of transition some of those learnings on to others, and help coach people through some of those difficult situations. The space that we're in is an interesting one. There's not necessarily a cookie cutter approach to how to do this in an organization. Every organization seems to do it a little bit differently. And so a lot of what I'm doing now is just trying to help other leaders understand what's going to be coming at them, like what roadblocks they're going to face, how to get over those hurdles, and keep things, moving forward in their organization.
Well, the one thing you said was, limited time to invest. And so one thing that surprised me, I remember last time we talked, I did not realize that amongst all your other time investments, you stumbled upon an e-commerce business kind
I
of
did.
accidentally and have been developing that. And so I'm just curious, because I think when you and I talked, I don't think that your success in that was unrelated to your data and analytics background, and it's probably, actually
Oh,
played an instrumental part. But maybe just
yeah.
talk a little bit about that and how your background actually drove what would seem a random path.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, anybody that knows me knows that I love luxury handbags. That's always been a problem for me, is luxury handbags. And I'll tell you what, when I left my 20-year career at Deere, I was a little bit like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do with my time. So what I did with my time was bought a bunch of luxury handbags, and then I kind of looked at that situation and I was like, I don't think I need all these luxury handbags, and I think I better figure out how to sell them, because that might have not have been the best use of my money. So
Yeah.
I did. I figured out how to sell them, and actually ended up starting an online kind of e-commerce business and luxury resale. And I just have a blast. I have a blast with it. I get to play with pretty things, and pretty things that I love, right? And enable other people's enable other people's habits as well. And it is really true what you said about the background in data analytics, and even just critical thinking, like how to do business well and critical thinking. All of those things factored into I would say, turning lemons into lemonade, kind of a situation. It really started with looking at what I had, how to sell it, and then it's like, oh, I could create a supply chain out of this. I could invest in the supply side. I can invest in the demand side, right? I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same type of thought process that we go through in an organization around analytics. But that's kind of what I've done. I've invested both in the supply side and the demand side in that business, and have really actually built a pretty profitable online resale business over the course of the year, and I'm just having a ton of fun doing it. So
No, that's awesome.
yeah.
So you've hit on this a little bit already, but tying these last couple themes together,
Mhm.
what's one or two of the skills or traits you have that you think have most helped you be successful across all of these aspects of your career?
Yeah. One of them is probably just grit. Like just I kind of have the mentality that if there's a problem in front of me, I'm gonna go figure it out. Like I don't know how to figure it out, but I'm gonna figure out how to figure it out, right? So I think some of it is just really mindset of not giving up and just really being interested in digging in and solving problems. I think that's probably one. The other thing that I would point on that I've mentioned a couple times, but I think it's probably the most important of all the things is to invest in people and take care of people. That has been very consistently for me. I just I value people. I value other people's experiences and opinions and perspectives. And I know they were formed by some life experience at some point in time. And everybody's had all these different life experiences. So really just the attitude that I have something to learn from everyone that I come in contact with, I think has been really important to getting me to where I am now and just helping me decide what the right things are to do and how to spend my time. So that's probably the other piece that I would just really say has been critical to my success, I think, is just investing in people and taking care of the people around you.
When you wake up in the morning these days and you look at your calendar and you've got
Yeah.
whatever's on that calendar,
Mm-hmm.
what is it today? Because I'm sure this changed over time, like everything else, from your early job to
Yeah.
now. But what would it be that you see on your calendar in the morning and then you're in for a good day? What's really motivating you and exciting you these days?
Yeah. I would say one is not having a calendar that has every minute of it booked. That's exciting to me. In my corporate career before I left Deere, I mean, I pretty commonly was every day in meetings from 6:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. Like there was never, I mean, I eat lunch while I was in a meeting. It's just constant meetings. The actual freedom to think right now, like have some brain space is really exciting to me. So it may not be the answer you wanted, but being able to look at my calendar and have it have openings on it
Yeah.
is actually pretty amazing because it just gives me space to think. The things I really love doing most, when I think about how to schedule my days is, when I have calls, actually opportunities like this one, right? Or calls with other leaders that I'm working with to try to really dig into problems that they're having and help them figure out how to solve it, right? It's not about me anymore. And I really appreciate that, right? It's about like, how can I stay completely behind the scenes, right? Completely behind the scenes, completely invisible, and help someone else be successful, give them some tidbits or nuggets that they need, right, to help them be successful. So those are the things that I would say really kind of get me going and get me excited about a day.
I love your point about the freedom to think in the free time. And, I think there's a huge distinction between, oh, I'm going to be lazy or I'm glad I don't have anything I have to do that day. That's not at all what you're saying because I hear
No.
you, right? It used to drive me crazy when I'd have calls from like 8, like to your point, 8 till 6. And
Yeah.
every call is another sticky note or another pad of paper. And all I have are notes on all the things. And by the time I
Just
get to the
sticky
end of the
notes
day,
everywhere.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't even remember what the first call was about, let alone have time to ever take any action. And so when
Yeah.
everyone's in that mode, it's almost like everyone's just reactive and
Mm-hmm.
punting things or making a snap decision. And so, yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
used to be pretty aggressive of blocking a couple hour chunks a couple times a week on my calendar
Yeah.
so that I could force some time for myself. I wasn't always able to protect it, but I tried. But I
Yeah.
think that that's an important thing that if I was in a large company today, I think one of my leadership things would be to be require some meeting free periods during the week or something because people need that time to
Yeah.
think.
They do, and I think organizations are trying to get a little bit better about that. Like I think just how the virtual nature and how we're all on Zooms all the time and things like that, right? People are so accessible that it's very easy just to say my whole day is going to be on Zooms, right? I think organizations are trying to create that space for people. But I will tell you, I tried a lot of different ways to keep that space when I was in corporate, and I never could because here's the thing: if I had time blocked to think and somebody on my team needed me, I'm always going to support what that person needs, right? Like when you're in an organization and you have responsibility for other people, like that's your job. And I loved doing that, right? So it really is just very different. It's much less of a firefighting mentality, and what I'm finding is kind of owning my own company gives me a lot more freedom to have control over how I'm going to run my day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
I similarly have experienced, the excitement of having a job now at the university where it is not
Yeah.
standard that everybody's on calls every day. In fact, because a lot of the faculty members, I mean, they're doing research. Their job is the thinking time. So,
Yeah.
in my role, I do end up with some calls every day, but it's enough to keep things interesting, not be,
Hmm.
overwhelmed. So,
Yeah. I
um,
don't think I'd be happy in a purely research type of role. I
yeah.
really enjoy talking to other people and kind of hearing what's going on with other folks' jobs and things. So I think it's a good mix.
I never would have known you like talking to people, and I'm sure listeners couldn't have told it all.
No, I don't ever talk very much.
So, what would you give to, let's say, either students or people very early in their career? Maybe they're in their first couple years of work and trying to get, in the analytics data science. I guess now you throw AI in there as well, fields.
Yeah.
What would be some advice you give to them today?
Yeah. Great question. The field changes so fast that I think just keeping up with, I mean, certainly what it looked like when I came out of school is completely different than what it looks like now, right? For anybody that's earlier in their career. One of the things that I don't think has changed, and I feel like a little bit of a broken record saying this, but I don't think that the impact of the people around you is any less. You've got to invest in the people around you. That's probably the biggest thing I would say. And I actually think in the age of AI, it's even more important. I mean, I've seen a lot of things relative to chat GPT usage and AI in general, where, if you let these systems run off on their own,
Yeah.
we're in trouble, right? They do, there are unintended consequences to that, right? So it's almost taking care of each other, and then the human element of kind of watching out for and putting good boundaries and parameters around these algorithms, I think is really, really important. So, I think doubling down on the tech and understanding the tech and understanding how to program the algorithms and things like that is really, really important. But I think we're a little short-sighted if we don't also invest in the kind of the coaching or safety or ethics kind of around those algorithms. So that would probably be my advice, is to really focus on that. I think if you want to differentiate yourself, it's the combination of the hard technical skills and the ability to lead people, to provide ethical frameworks, like some of those types of more softer skill type things. It's the combination of those things that's going to set you apart.
Yeah, great. I think that's some great advice there. So I've taken enough of your time so far. So we'll just finish with one quick thing. If you look out
Yeah.
3, 5 years, what do you think is going to be the maybe one of the biggest trends that's going to hit us in the world of analytics data science?
Oh yeah. I think it's going to be unintended consequences of AI. I think in 3 to 5 years we're going to be dealing with. I mean, we're already dealing with some of them, right? But I think that's going to become more and more of an issue. And so when you think about those trends, and again, how to prepare yourself, like if you want to be the hero, right? It's really understanding both the technical and the human implications of those models. And I think that's something. If I was going to watch one thing, it would be that, and how to help organizations kind of untangle some of those unintended consequences.
Well, thank you so much. I think your insights were great,
Yeah,
and I'm sure you've got some bags to go sell. So
every day.
anyway, thanks so much for joining me on the show, and I appreciate your time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bill.